Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first full installment of the Mercenary Historian channel. My name is David. I am the aforementioned Mercenary Historian. At this point, I have been a professor of history for well over a decade, and I thought I would pop in to share with you some historical knowledge. Now, as you can probably guess from this presentation, I'm kind of new at the whole YouTube thing. However, if you stick with me, I promise that we will do our best to improve a little bit every week. So bear with us. And with October on the horizon and Halloween as part of that, and I myself, as you might be able to tell from my background, am a huge fan of horror movies. I thought I would start with one of the traditional myths and maybe some historical information you didn't know. Uh, and what's more traditional as far as creatures of the night than vampires, right? Now, many cultures have their blood drinking legends, from the Lamashtu of Mesopotamia, the Ads of Africa, and the Penanggalan of Malaysia. But today I wanted to focus on the Western idea of the vampire that's kind of dominated horror and romantic fiction for much of the modern age. Now, the first written reference to a vampire like creature shows up in Old Russian in 1047 or thereabouts. And it seemed to be a reference to some form of spiritual entity that could possess the dead. But this thing bore little resemblance to the immortal, charming creature of modern tales. Instead, it was a ruddy, bloated human that behaved more like an overfed tick than a European noble in an opera cape, right? Uh, Now, the reality of myths, especially this one, is used often as a way to explain various natural processes. And in this case, vampirism seems to have a deep and abiding connection with disease. Uh, and there are many diseases that were very common in those eras that bear deep links to vampirism, or the concept of vampirism at the very least. One more common is rabies, which is an encephalitis viral uh, disease which caused a violent madness and was transferred by a bite. Already, we have some commonalities there. Another symptom of rabies involves hydrophobia, a violent panic when presented with liquids. This might explain the origins of vampiric limitations about crossing running water, right? You can kind of see these connections as we talk more and more about it. For example, another disease that probably had quite a bit to do with the vampire myth is iron deficiency porphyria, a genetic disease that means your body can't hold iron. I'm sorry, as you progress along. There's no way to fix that, and the symptoms are light sensitivity, redness of the skin, swelling, accelerated hair growth, and a shrinking of the gums that can make the teeth appear larger than normal. And once again, you can see these connections with vampirism, right? Now, this is just the start of the legend. Clearly, it's very different now, and as diseases changed, vampires changed with them. For example, when a wave of tuberculosis swept through Europe in the 17th century, the vampire became different. a gaunt, pale figure that attacked its relatives after death. And once again, you can see the crossover between the legend of the vampire and the diseases that are popular at the time. Even the advent of syphilis and the epidemics that also swept through Europe changed the legend again with a more charming fiend who visited its victims in their bed and spread its curse. The parallels are pretty obvious once you're aware that they're there. Now, with all that said, and I would love to discuss vampirism more in the comments with you. If you have any questions, I'll gladly try to answer them to the best of my ability. But I want to give you a real incident involving vampirism. Yes, there are. Or let me be clear, at least the belief in vampirism and how that affected a specific town and a specific time. Now, in the late 1880s, New England was in the grip of a consumptive epidemic, as we now know it, tuberculosis. That's bad enough, right? But often fear and desperation combine to destroy logic and reason. Fear is a corrosive emotion. It robs you of rational thought. And the desperate people of the region, at a loss to deal with the massive death toll, came to a different answer than disease. Now, as we know these days, tuberculosis is spread through proximity. And in the 19th century, in the fall and winter, that meant family. So, as the epidemic progressed and whole families succumbed to the disease one after the other, a belief spread that vampires were returning from the dead to drain the life from their loved ones. It was 1880, right? It's supposed to be further along than that. Clearly not. The panic reached its height in Exeter, Rhode Island, and centered on the unfortunate Brown family. Now, in 1881, Mary Brown died of tuberculosis. She was followed within a few months by her oldest daughter, Olive. The deaths of several cousins followed, and the siblings, Mary's youngest children, Mercy and Edwin, contracted the disease in 1891. Mercy really didn't survive long, and in an illogical, possibly, attempt to save young Edwin, the angry townsfolk panicked and began to hunt for the vampire that was responsible for all these deaths. The angry mob, and that's what they are. They're not just townsfolk. Reason has abandoned these people, and they bully George Brown into exhuming the bodies of his family. Now, this is against the objections of the local doctor, who is clear and understanding of what the disease is. He knows what consumption is. He's very clear about it. But the exhumations happen anyway. The first bodies, Mary and Olive, are apparently sufficiently decomposed for the crowd to clear them of any hint of vampirism. However, the body of Mercy Brown was deemed to be too fresh for any reasonable corpse. Now, the townsfolk believed they had identified the culprit, but the doctor, once again, tries to step in, acting as a voice of reason. He points out that Mercy was buried in the winter, and she's only been dead a couple weeks as compared to her mother and siblings who had been in the grave for over a year in at least one case. But, the town was a little too far gone to let inconvenient facts get in the way of their solution. Mercy's body was decapitated and then dismembered, and then her heart was removed, her liver was also removed, and they were burned along with her head in a separate location to stop the vampire. Now, this is bad enough, as you can probably assume here, but we're not done. I haven't given you the best part. You see, the crowd somewhere along the way gets the idea to take the ashes of Mercy's organs and make a tea out of them, and then they broke in to the Brown home and force-fed this tea to young Edwin in the idea that this would break him of the vampiric curse. You can probably guess this didn't work. In fact, the trauma of it kind of accelerated things, and young Edwin died within a day or so of this, let's say, unfortunate event. And the exposure spread the tuberculosis amongst the angry mob, making things even worse. Now, as horrible as that all is, there's a side note to this. George Brown did survive. He never got the disease. And he actually lived until 1922, which was long enough for him to see the invention of the tuberculosis vaccine that would have saved his family. There you are. My short first installment. Next time, I haven't yet decided what we're going to do. However, we're going to continue the series of real historical horror stories. Tell me what you want to know. I may delve into vampire or zombies, werewolves, ghosts, maybe. At least the historical analysis of these ideas. Please, let me know what you want to say. Now, I have to say it because here I am on YouTube. Like and subscribe, please. It helps the YouTube algorithm, especially with a brand new channel like mine. Spread the word. As I said, I love talking about history. Make your suggestions. Several already have, and I will continue to make a list, and we will go forward with anything you want to know. Now, in between this series on historical horror stories, I'm also going to intersperse some other videos, so keep an eye out and hopefully tune in next time. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the comments.